Hi everyone. In today's episode, I'm speaking with Marco Romano, who created an IT learning hub called IT Fandango for D365 F&O Finance and Operations, where you can buy a couple of tiers. How does it work? How can you get access to the D365 F&O environment on a monthly subscription? So he will talk more about why he created, how you can use it, how easy it is for you to go in and practice as a consultant and other things. So please watch the full episode and let us know what you think. So jump into the episode with Marco Romano. So thank you for joining. Hi everyone. Today we have Marco Romano from IT Fandango. So hi Marco, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Hi Ragnar, glad to be here. All good. It's a very rainy Friday here in the UK, so I'm trying my best not to look outside the window, not to get depressed. So.
Not to get, yeah, I know you're from Europe and UK, but I just wanted to can you give a brief intro on where you're from and what are you doing, and how did you launch IT Fandango as well?
Absolutely. So I am Italian, and that explains my fixation now with the rain and the bad weather that I found in the UK. Okay. And I moved I was born in Italy. I grew up in Italy, and I moved to the UK 8 years ago, almost 8 years ago now. And I've been here long enough to become a citizen, but obviously secretly I still crave the Italian weather, the Italian food, and I miss all of that. And I started with F&O, Finance and Operations. Well, it was Dynamics AX at the time, 10 years ago. So I've been in the industry for a decade. I haven't done anything else aside from working with AX and F&O as a functional consultant. And I've seen a few implementations, from the good ones and the bad ones. And I started as an employee for a big consultancy company, and eventually I decided to go solo. So with a contractor, that's when I created IT Fandango. And about a couple of years ago, probably, yes, that's when I realized that if I was trying to do everything myself, the only possible result with that is to work evenings and weekends, to work nights. There's just not enough capacity in a single individual to do everything. So I thought I have to scale up, and that's what I started doing with scaling up IT Fandango, with having more consultants, and also launching the Learning Hub as a training platform.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I think the first time I was trying to find what are the other options you have to get F&O. Because for me to make videos, I was thinking, I went to the Microsoft has the, the GitLab stuff, so you can still log into F&O. But then I found you. But also I've known you on LinkedIn with your posts about how to become a better consultant. So I think the Learning Hub is mostly focused on F&O. And on your profile, you say you want to help consultants become 10% or even better, more in the industry, right? So can you give me a brief on what was your interest in doing so? What have you seen, and how can you help people?
Yes, absolutely. And there were two reasons mainly why I decided to launch the Learning Hub. The first one is that in my experience as a consultant on projects, I definitely saw some people calling themselves functional consultants, but not knowing the basics, not even knowing the basic features in the system, but also engaging with the customers the wrong way. So people that really had nothing to do with being functional consultants. And likewise, you have people who know the system, but then they don't know how to design a solution. They don't know how to understand what the customer wants, what the customer does, what the customer really needs. So there is more than just knowing the system, just knowing the software, in being a functional consultant. And that's what I thought. So if I look around on LinkedIn, there are 1 million people who keep sharing a lot of blog posts, videos, content on how to use this function or that function in the system. But then what about being a consultant? Because knowing the system is not nowhere nearly enough. So I thought, all right, I tried myself to post something about how to do this or that in the system, relatively obscure features, how to do something particular with security roles. That was a post of mine that was super successful with 300 plus like at the time, big success. But then I thought, okay, but this is not, again, it's still not being a consultant. So what makes the difference? And what I thought as well is the other side with this is, can I challenge myself if I want to do more than just being a contractor and just working solo? Can I challenge myself to be an entrepreneur and create a service from scratch that is going to be meaningful, valuable, and actually helpful to people? And that's how the Learning Hub was born. And it even had a different name at the time. I had different ideas, and a lot of that has been trial and error, and it still is. It's not final, it's not complete, because well, first of all, I don't have a massive amount of resources where I can say, oh, there's now 50 people working on this, let's create something completely new from scratch. So it's been a lot of evolution. Not even the name was the correct one at the beginning. And an integral part of this was to offer access to F&O as a software, because it's not there. What you were talking about, the access to the virtual machine, the labs that Microsoft makes available, those last 4 hours, and they are painfully slow, and you can't do much with them anyway. And they are just a very minor part of a course that is otherwise completely theoretical. So again, it doesn't make you a consultant to just know the software. It makes you even less of a consultant to only know the theory beyond the software. You need hands-on experience. So that's why I decided to effectively create my own environment, take the hit myself. But then I thought, if there is enough people using this, it's still useful for people at a fraction of the actual cost, and I don't have to be at a loss every month. It still makes it viable. So, and on top of that, it's all the rest of the content that I've created and still creating.
No, that's great. I mean, for me, when I used to hire a lot of consultants for both functional, technical, and developers as well. One of the key things I learned was a lot of people know how, but they don't know the root concept of why are we doing a certain thing, right? So it's understanding the process is what makes a consultant. Understanding, solving the problem that the business has nothing to do with the process sometimes, because sometimes you need to find a new process, or you have to create a new process, or you have to think out of the box, right? So I was always keen and interested in hiring people, not about how they can do. I'm more interested in how they can support the end client or the business, right? So that makes a good consultant. You're a good consultant when you can work with the business and the technical team and come with a solution based on your understanding of the whole system, not based on, I only know how to do it this way, right?
Exactly. And you're absolutely right on that. So I think I've been lucky because I've liked IT since I was very young. I think I got my first computer when I was 6. So I started with it, playing video games. There wasn't really, internet was not really a big thing at the time, and exploring the small things, the office packet paint and all those things then. And I've always been in IT. I still play video games. So I still play with paint as well. So that's it. And obviously then I thought, what can I make? What profession can I choose that it still reflects my passion for IT, but is still meaningful? And there was one way I wanted to become an engineer. So in Italy is a bit different than how it's considered in the UK. And what I chose eventually is this degree called management engineering, which is IT applied to how a company works. So I was lucky there to understand how a company operates in terms of processes as well, plus the IT side, which is how the IT tools, whatever those are, the whole IT infrastructure is supporting a company and how a company works. And there are a lot of people who don't get this, because F&O is big, it's a complex software, but when you find a certain feature in the system, that's not how that process works. That's the IT representation, the virtual representation, the application the representation in the IT world of how a certain function can work. Let me make an example. Purchase orders in the system. The idea is that you raise a purchase order, or before that you raise a purchase requisition. It has to go through workflow, and then it gets approved, it gets converted to a purchase order, and then it's processed. Well, clearly then, if you want to raise a purchase order, you either do it manually or you go through a purchase requisition needs to be approved. Okay, but that's the only the IT side of things. The business logic behind it is that the requirement is to capture the internal requirements of people who want to request something that may or may not be in the company, in this case as a purchase requisition of the external, and then to have control over the expenditure and have approvers at different levels that are going to do that. So there are business concepts behind it that you're never going to see in the application because the application doesn't deal with them.
Yeah.
And whatever business needs are there in the application, they are represented in a certain way that suits the IT logic, not the company logic, because how a company operates is different. There are the end-to-end processes, but it's full of exceptions. It's full of reacting to the market, things going wrong, and so on. And as a consultant, you need to understand this, in my opinion, before you can translate a solution at system level. So that's the second step after understanding how the system works, is understanding how a company works process-wise.
No, that's great. I mean, I worked with a couple of, like, recent example was like one of the funniest things for me was like, what happened was, I think it's for me, when I see something wrong, I look at, like, I think they should, one, it's not about the solution, it's about, did we educate enough to the business sometimes, right? Sometimes they had this simple, like, same purchase requisition something. What happened was they needed to create POs. Instead of creating a PO with product receipt, they didn't enable the product receipt feature. So what it does is it disables the whole feature about you having to match the invoices manually afterwards. Only if they told us product receipt is a simple feature, it doesn't have to be a physical product, it could still be a digital product still. But using that feature removes all your manual process of matching invoices and stuff, right? So I was trying to help them understand. And that's where I feel like one of the things I was interested in IT Fandango was like you told, it's only 4 hours I get. But sometimes consultants, there are a lot of people who want to try new things. But when you're at a job, you cannot do certain things. You don't want to play with or change things. That's when something like this tool will be helpful, because you can go on your own and play with it and understand. You can do a whole process. There are a lot of videos sometimes I watch, and they're like amazing, from Microsoft mechanics and other things. They talk about these topics, like subscription billing is new recently, right? They're removed from recurring billing. I'm trying to do the whole process, but I needed somewhere to do it. And then that's when I thought of you guys. But then I thought it could be a great podcast to learn more about this tool, even from you, and even for other people, like consultants, they could actually practice. If you're new, your experience can go much further than what your business requirements are, because sometimes you're in finance company, but you want to be in SCM at a certain point, but you will never be hired because you don't have experience. But if you practice, you can at least tackle the answers, understand the concept, and do the whole end-to-end process in like investing in something like your company, right? So in Learning Hub, I would say. So
yes, but that's exactly what the platform is for. So just to make the example that it's exactly what you said about practicing on a new feature. You need a sandbox, a vanilla environment where you can practice freely and create your own things and so on. And the more vanilla it is, the more you start from not having any data in, the easier it is for you to understand, because you are forced to start from the initial setup, and you understand the dependencies in the system, and you understand how the standard system works and how it behaves. And after that, you can actually apply that to how a company actually operates. And this, in my opinion, knowing how the system works, in my opinion, is even more effective if you are in a job interview. So there are people who say, oh, I'm going to just get certified, so I just do the theoretical learning, and I get this badge, and I'm going to be selected for an interview. Yeah, that definitely helps, but you're going to be miles ahead if in an interview you can demonstrate to the potential job giver, the employer, that you know what the system does and how the system operates. I mean, I was doing interviews myself when I was still moving contract to contract, as opposed to now looking for projects for my company and my team. And when I was there, I knew enough about it, and I've seen enough implementation that actually I had fun to have interviews with clients, and I was the one asking the questions. I was asking them, how are you using the system? And then I was kind of grilling them, because I know enough of the system, and that's a way for me to show them how they're doing, why they're doing it, asking them that, what they're doing in implementation. At the same time, show them that I know what I'm talking about. And that all starts with understanding the system and then showing that you understand, as we said, the business process and the situation of a company there. So it's extremely, I have some of my subscribers who are actually senior solution architects, because they said, well, they see that it's a bargain to get access to an F&O environment at that price, and even if they use it once a month, it's still that time where you need it, and you want to learn a new feature in the system. It's still good value. So sometimes too much good value, considering that I have other subscribers who then bombard me with questions, asking me how to do the setup, how to do things, and I can't answer all of them. It's just not viable for me. So here's the environment, learn how to do it, get access to it, and practice and figure it out, because you're a consultant, you have to.
Yeah. And I think like you said, solutions act, even for me, I was interested in it for the same reason. It's just like when I worked in certain companies, I had access to this development environment. I have my own machines. But once you leave and you're in a different company, if your company doesn't have that feature, I think you provide 2 tiers. So those are great for someone to just get into. So can you give me a brief about how did you come up with the 2 tiers and what are the differences with it?
So yes, I'll get to that. And what you're saying about, having access to your own environment because your employer provides it. This is funny because I actually have a couple of people, actually probably more than 2, who are consultants and I'm working for a partner, and they still pay for the subscription to access the environment because the one I have is cleaner and more stable. Like they were practicing on the one of their employer, and one day it wasn't available. The other day, some other people was playing around with their same records and so on. So they just, or it's not up to date to the latest version. So they just stay subscribed to mine. They use it as a reference because it's available. It's always there. They can access it at any point. It's always up, and they can create their own legal entities from scratch. And they know that they have their own records that other people are not going to touch. So this is actually. Even people who have access to an environment, they still rely on mine.
And that's a good use case too. Like I think
absolutely. I've even had people who, and this is honestly funny, and it makes me think that it's a trial and error because you think about something and you find that people want something different. You have to adjust and adapt. I've had at least 2-3 ERP managers who subscribe to my platform just to have a sneaky review of what F&O does and whether it was suitable for their needs. So they were absolutely not functional consultants. They were not interested in becoming one, but they were interested in the access to the system. And about the multiple tiers, so when I launched the Learning Hub, again at the beginning, I was imagining something on the line of a basic tier where you get access just to the system and off you go on your own. A tier up, which is that plus weekly calls with me, and you can engage with me and ask me questions and so on. And another tier above that with one-to-one support with me, mentorship, or whatever it is. This has evolved in time because I've noticed how people look for different things or engage. They learn differently and so on. So we run the Q&A sessions on a weekly basis for 1 year, and then I've noticed how people were joining less or engaged differently or prefer to send me an email instead. So I've decided to discontinue them and instead change how this is going to work, but I'm still making all the recordings available. And I put a few of them. I started doing it. This is interesting because I took those recordings, which were no different, but very similar to the podcast that we're having now, but they were running with a small group of people. And I get them transcribed. I have somebody to help me with the admin part. And then I take this transcript, I select the parts where I can see that we're talking about something meaningful, and I feed that to AI, and I ask AI to generate a summary of that with a question at the beginning. So I managed to take selected parts of the transcript and do a digest, which then I make available on the subscribers area, which is something relatively new that we launched as well. So the dedicated space for all the content for all the subscribers, and I plan to grow that. And there's now the video with the digest with specific questions, and almost none of those questions are how I do something in the system. But they're all questions on the like of, for example, somebody asked me, what was the shortest project that I participated in and why? Somebody asked me, how are certifications actually useful to find a role? Or the other thing is, if I'm transitioning to F&O, when do I recognize that I'm ready to apply for a role? And there's a bunch of other questions, so I would expect as soon as I finish processing all the recordings and putting there, I think we may reach 100 of them. And again, you understand how these questions are not just practice on the system, but it's all the nuances that you need to know as a consultant. Okay, these were simple cases of when can I apply? But there were other questions such as what do you do if you are in a meeting and you have participants who don't engage? And you still have a consultant, you need to deliver a solution or get to a certain result in the meeting. How do you sway them? How do you keep unruly users aligned to what the goal of the meeting is? And these are all still things that you're going to face as a consultant. They're not related with the system, but they're going to get there, but they're still part of your job, your role, and they leverage a different set of skills that are not just the knowledge of the system there. So that's how I imagine, and I'll see where it leads me to create more content and make it available there and see what people really engage with. And you know, just to add to that, to make the example of, I have something in mind. I know that the average consultant needs to improve their soft skills. They need to improve how to do FTDs, but then people don't necessarily understand that. So how do I, and they focus on something else. They focus on, I need to learn another part of the system. No, you don't. You're already specializing in one area. Don't learn another area. Learn how to be better, to provide better value to the client and how to perceive as such. But it's not easy to always communicate that. So what I had in my mind about how people should engage with the platform, what they should learn, it's not necessarily what people have in their mind. So it's a good challenge for me to figure out how to make this interesting to people and still relevant.
Yeah, no, I've seen that in my like, I was managing certain people and I can understand each one's capabilities, right? So for me, I know some things come through experience. Like one of the examples you said, sometimes it's hard to like, how do you engage someone who's trying to not participate, but you know for sure they're going to become trouble once you start working, right? So identifying those, I realized that working with certain group of people for a while, I could notice that, oh, I need this person to talk, but when I have the consultant, when they don't ask the question, I try to nudge and help them and guide. But I think what you're saying is basically accelerated growth. Basically, you don't need to have 5 years experience. You could gain 5 years of experience through learning, grow, like listening to even this podcast. I think what you're saying is helpful sometimes, because that's why I'm trying to think of other ways to like enhance people to accelerated growth. Like 50 years ago, 20 years ago, like I sometimes, do you know Alan Watts? He's like, he's from UK. He used to do some, life coaching kind of a thing. I wonder always, like, how did he read all those books? Because now we have access to everything and we cannot still read. And sometimes that's where these people have become such brilliant minds, because they used to read scriptures from India and like other places, living in one part of the country when even getting a book from India is hard. Now we can get it within a day, but we still don't invest in that part of accelerated growth. No. Same like here, Learning Hub, like you're doing, because sometimes it feels... do I need to spend? Sometimes it's more about, do I have time? Sometimes it's about other things. But about the money, when I looked at it, one of the key things I read was like, you're trying to look at the purchase power parity thing. So I kind of like that concept, because even for me, one of the key things is I am fortunate that I came from India, and I know how things are going, and I was fortunate to get my degree for at a certain time. Nowadays, everything's expensive, and like we calculate everything in USD nowadays. But even 10 USD seems like, oh, it's only 10 for me. But if I go back and start thinking, it all adds up when you're in a different country with different currency fluctuations, right? So I really like that initiative that you're trying to do. So can you give a brief about that and what you're thinking?
100%. And the goal of the Learning Hub is not to make me rich.
Yeah.
I mean, I provide consultancy services as a consultant, and I have a small team. IT Fandango makes the majority of its revenue by providing consultancy services as consultants, as functional consultants doing F&O implementations. So I don't expect to have a million subscribers on the platform and getting having that as an extra driver of revenue and so on. So my goal with the Learning Hub, as I said, is to make something that is useful and valuable for people, and hence the concept of purchasing power parity. I understand that take the basic tier, that's £27 a month, and this used to be £27 plus VAT, because as a company I have to apply VAT, and I decided to even remove that, so that £27 already has the VAT in it. Okay. So my revenue is even lower than that. Yeah. So again, it's more, and to be honest, you could say you could give something free to people, and people are not going to accept it because they're not going to use it, because they need to be motivated enough to invest money into something. Like I ran an initiative in the past and I gave 1 month free to a few people. There's people who just took that and never logged in, because again, if something's free, you're not motivated enough to actually use it. But at the same time, those £27 for the UK is the cost of a gym membership per month. And again, okay, some people as well, they pay for gym and they never go there. So yes, it's the same concept. But in other parts of the world, like India or Pakistan, that's too much. And that's why I was thinking about making it flexible. But I also understand how, if I try to do this, that there's an infinite amount of features that I can introduce and make available, but then it's going to become a full-time training platform, which is going to take all of my time. So I'm noticing how I need to still be a bit mindful of how I invest in it, because it does take time. There's a lot of work in the background that I do, and that with my graphic designer, developer, and content manager we do. And it's not perceived on the outside, but there's a lot of work actually going on to make the content available meaningful and the experience accessible to people, and still make sure that the service is provided. The idea of purchasing power parity is, again, to make it more fair to different people around the world to still have access to the platform, even if they can't pay what is a standard price in the UK, which tends to be high if compared to other parts of the world. So that's something we're working on, and we hope to introduce in the close future with that. But just to add, sorry, I want to add something else on the background. So this is definitely a behind the scene, but when somebody subscribes, what happens is that Stripe collects the payment.
Yeah.
Now that we've introduced the members area, the user is created on WordPress, where the website is, to handle the access to a reserved area that you need credentials for. Then the user is moved onto the CRM platform, because we use it to communicate by email, to collect the details and so on. And then we also have the user for Dynamics, for F&O, so the Azure user and the access to the sandbox environment. So you can see how it's not trivial, and there is a good amount of integration that goes on. And so I tend to be very cautious, as in what happens if I get hundreds and hundreds of subscribers or something like that, and this has to be flawless and fully automated and handle all possible cases. So on one side, I would like to introduce more features and get more people on board. On the other side, I'm very mindful that if I don't do this properly, then I'm going to be swamped by requests for support or admin work and so on. So it really is a fine balance. And again, because the price here is low to make it accessible, then I need to be mindful of that as well, because I may not have enough resources. It's not a price point that is like £1,000 of access to my time one-to-one. It's something that is a low price, so you can get access to it and build your skill set, build your knowledge, and go on get into the F&O space, which would be a lot more difficult otherwise.
Yeah. No,
sorry, I've touched a bunch of different things, but
I agree with going.
All the thoughts that go in my mind.
No, I don't like free stuff too, because basically when you do something free, it's a human thing. It's a human nature. When you don't attach some value to it, you don't get something. Like if you there is this guy called Alex Hermosi. He's like one of the. He's not a YouTuber, I would say he's a businessman, but he did a book called 100 Million Offers or whatever. But he sold the book for just $1. He didn't want to make money like you. He's more interested in helping people, right? He made it just for $1. But the thing is, that dollar is something that makes you invest or read at least the first few things, then you get into it. Like even when someone subscribes to a basic tier, I think the goal would be once you log in and you try a few things, you are kind of you get some encouragement by yourself to like do certain things with. And also for you, like you said, the overhead of like adding a user is not something straightforward. We can streamline a lot of things, but it still requires a lot of your guidance, your team's effort to like get them in place, right? So I think the price seems fair to me based on if I had to get my own F&O and other things.
The price is I mean, what I leverage on is the fact that I have a bunch of subscribers, and so they all pay to contribute to the cost of a single environment, which if you were to get a single environment yourself, you would need to be a company to handle that type of cost monthly. Because people ask me, oh, why do you make an environment available if you can get it for free from Microsoft? No, you can't. You get the latest thing is that you get a trial, which has 1 month and it expires. If you want your own environment, you either download it locally, and good luck with maintaining that because it's time consuming, or you spin up your own VM, which is going to cost you even if it's post, because you have earmarked the hardware and Microsoft charges you for that hardware. So no, it's not free. There is a cost, and with numbers, it's accessible, and that's what I try to leverage on. And as I said, my goal here is not to make a profit. If I ever decide to review the offer and to review the price, which I guess this is going to happen after we launch the B2B website and I want to streamline things a bit more, I'm going to do that because it just takes too much of my time to maintain a training platform as such, and I'm not at a stage where I can, as I said, delegate to a whole department or 50 people and say build that and have millions of subscribers. That's not my goal either. So I'm not there either. So, but it's still trial and error for me with this learning app project. I never built anything similar before, and we'll see how it evolves later on. With that, you can also get access to my time one-to-one. And I just noticed how that effectively takes a lot longer than just me providing the call, because then people ask me questions. I need to prepare beforehand. I also provide an actionable report as career advice after that. And that adds up. It's just time. It's just a million extra things that you have to deal with. And it doesn't look like it, but they are there, and there's a lot of work. That's what I'm trying to say in the background, and a lot more than what you can imagine. Even if in your mind you imagine a simple thing, that there's a lot of effort behind it, and it's possibly the reason why nobody else has created anything similar. Because again, unless you're on a mission like I'm doing to try to help people and become recognized as an expert who's doing this, otherwise there's no point in doing something like that. Training consultants that sell their services to prepare for certification and so on, they go for £500 a day. So that's
I know, I've seen those. I've recently come across those things too. Like when I've learned everything on job, mostly it's sometimes hard nowadays because sometimes companies don't have that much time, like 5-10 years ago, because I used to come in, I was a CE developer, converted into F&O person now, but that took time over the years. But sometimes that time's not there with the company and the person now. But this is the accelerated way to do things. I completely agree. And one of the things for me was yesterday night I was thinking, should I log in to see how the process looks? But then I thought, after talking with you, I'll do it after and attach it as part of the video. So if you're watching, you'll see me log in and create my account to just have an idea before you even get there, because sometimes some people don't even want to click that login or subscribe because they don't know how many steps I have to go through. So I'll do that as thank you to you. And I also want to have this environment for me. I'm working on certain videos and things, so I'll be using it as my tool to create these. I don't want to do tutorials, but also there are new features that sometimes they are not available. So I want to bring them up to speed. I'm excited.
It's funny how you say that, because I was just talking about the work that is in the background. So Stripe updated its API key or whatever it is. Sorry, I need my developer to
check.
But basically, that change broke all of our integrations. And I've had a few people subscribing over the weekend, and their accounts was not created correctly. So I just I wasn't even notified myself that I got new subscribed, because I still check things and so on. Going back to taking more of my time. And somebody just sent me an email saying, my credentials don't work, I can't access the environment. And I thought to myself, well, wait, first of all, who's this person? Is this somebody that got, how did they get? And then I checked it. It was somebody who actually paid and got created as a user, but just the whole integration didn't work out. So went there with my developer, meet the bug, they checked what the issue was, and okay, the Stripe keys, it was easy to update, but then there were the consequences on all the other the integration with the other systems and so on. So again, there's a lot of work going on there, but at the same time, what you were saying about accelerated growth, there's two aspects to that, in my opinion. One is that if you get access to the system, but also to the content, which is basically my 10 years of expertise put in form of articles, advice, my newsletters, my LinkedIn posts, the recording of the Q&A calls with the transcript, the curated content, which is a section there. Again, it's not advertised publicly yet, but it's basically a collection of third-party resources like blogs, videos, or other sites that help you prepare as a consultant, which I've started reviewing and putting there the review in the training platform in the subscribers area, so you can see how to make the most of those, where it makes sense to go, how to use them, and so on. And all of that is my experience of 10 years into content that you can consume quickly, and so it's going to accelerate your growth. But at the same time, and we go back to paying £500 for a training of 1 day to prepare for a certification and so on. That's too much in one go.
Yeah,
and that's why this has to be a subscription. So you're not going to learn the same thing, a bunch of things in the same time. You may see the same thing now, and in 3 months' time, after you've seen that actually use the same system feature, after you've experienced how a company does, and go back to the same feature and think, oh, now I understand why this works like that, or how a company would use that. And that's why it has to be, yes, you can condense the learning into less time than 10 years, but it's not like Matrix that you learn Kung Fu in 12 hours, 16 hours in a row. It's still, and that's why I built it as a subscription service, but still with the freedom of canceling anytime if you're busy in anything else. But my idea is to gradually release as much content as possible to still bring all the value that I can and take my knowledge and putting in content form and put it there for the subscribers.
Okay. No, I was thinking while you were speaking was like, it's not just accelerated growth, but when you're in certain, like let's say a 1 week course or 2 weeks course, sometimes it's just watching. Unless you start clicking buttons, you don't realize what happens. Sometimes you just want to create an invoice, then you realize like, oh, I didn't put in the invoice number, right? It's a simple thing like that.
There's nothing worse, in my opinion, than watching videos of how a system feature works when you are unable to actually click around yourself and learn how to do it.
And then once an error comes, you know how to solve that error.
Exactly.
Because that's the other thing most people don't realize is when you go with your own data, the process completely changes for most of the time.
Absolutely.
You add 10, 15 steps extra and then other things. Like that's one of the key things for me as well. Like even I'm more invested in the ODOP side, the Microsoft Fabric, because as I'm trying to look at the new technology and I'm trying to, that's what like encourages my mind. So, but also it's something new, and then building my own data was kind of, I'm working on that and testing the Fabric now. But on the other side, you were talking about one-on-one sessions, right? I think I study like philosophy, I like Stoic philosophy kind of a thing. But most people, even like when sometimes I get interview calls and people just say like, oh, I have a 1 hour interview like when you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to everything else.
Exactly.
Right? If you're giving your
This is exactly the problem that I have now, which if I think about all the extra scope and content that I would like to put in the Learning Hub, that would become a full-time thing, and I could basically give up any idea of scaling up my consultancy business or actually working as a consultant with clients, because it would give me enough work to do this full time, and it just wouldn't be sustainable. You're right, as soon as you say it. So I'm learning slowly how to say no. And as a functional consultant, I think that this is interesting because you know that you have to deliver. So as soon as there is something to do or a problem with the customer, the default answer is yes, give it to me, I'll solve it.
Yeah.
But that means that your capacity, you're always going to work at capacity, and whatever you say yes to, there's a million other things that you're not doing at this point. So you're absolutely right with that, and this is something that I still struggle with. I tend to say yes to everything that comes my way, but it doesn't make time for anything else. It just fills up all of my time.
Yeah, and like for me, like I'm going on vacation next week, and people keep asking. I'm like, if I have to say yes to like a half an hour meeting, I need to cancel my kayak appointment. I have to I have to wake up at a different time. I have to do everything differently. And even doing that one thing, like even you said like Q&A sessions kind of going away. I agree. Sometimes you need to like, you still have one-on-one, you still can get on an email and get to you. And then if it's a real important thing, you might be interested in talking and helping too. So I think that's a balance we will come to. And as you grow as well, I see a lot of potential. So I know we have a few more minutes left. One of the key things I was interested was like if someone's interested in having more questions, is LinkedIn the best place for you? What is your
absolutely yes? So LinkedIn, as I'm on LinkedIn every day, multiple times a day. So I tend to have messages piling up because I tend to receive a lot of them, but I do try my best. There's still a lot of people who just ask me more details on the Learning Hub, and I just point them to the website because we have an FAQ session and details on the platform, which each tier is about. But generally speaking, asking me questions, LinkedIn is the best way, the quickest way to reach out to me.
I know we've been talking more on the functional consultant side, but also you said you help companies with other consulting work yourself and your team. So do you have a small team? How are you trying to go? What's your next future look like?
So what the future looks like is that we started working on, so you may have noticed that if you go on the Learning Hub, it's actually not on the Learning Hub website, it's on the IT Fandango website. So that's because I had the domain available and I started building this training platform before having a proper B2B website for my consulting services, which I didn't need so far, effectively. And what I've done in the last, probably 2 years now, 1 year and a half, is to create my personal brand on LinkedIn by creating content at times, even five days a week. Now it's 3 days a week. So releasing as much content as possible to gain that visibility and establish my personal brand, and getting invited to podcasts, for example. And if you look at it, my profile screams that I'm an expert with F&O as a functional consultant. I teach others how to be functional consultants, which is true. That's what the platform is about. But in the future, you will see a transformation in the next 2 to 3 months. As we launch the B2B website, I'm going to be more focused on what I'm building, which is IT Fandango itself. So the B2B website will take will take the space of the training platform. The training platform will go on a dedicated subdomain that's going to be with the Learning Hub itself properly there. And we're going to have this distinction between, let's call it B2C, and other consultants to learn how to be functional consultant with the Learning Hub, and IT Fandango, which is going to be a niche consultancy company, which is already what I provide with my team, with my consultants as well. So it's 4 of us now, and soon to get another person on board. And the idea is to help consultancy companies with the actual F&O implementations where the partner doesn't arrive, because what we know, this will be a completely separate podcast, probably a completely
we'll
separate topic. But F&O implementations are becoming so big that they just don't get delivered smoothly. I often compare those as implementing F&O is like building a skyscraper, and you need to first build the foundations, so dig the foundations, dig down and build the foundations. That would be your analysis of the processes before you even mention the software, and then you start building, and there's different layers. And the example that I often make, which I find it funny, but with a skyscraper, you're not gonna start placing the roof. That's a very silly example, but you're not gonna start placing the antenna on top until you've reached the last floor. You start from down, you start building up, and then you put the walls, you put the windows, and so on. So in ERP, why do you start configuring the system before you've understood what all the business case, the use cases at business process level are? And you don't see that because the system is virtual and you don't see it physically like a skyscraper. So it's a lot more common, a lot more likely that the effort is going to be wasted on things that are actually not needed there and at that stage, but the prerequisites are missing.
Yes.
And I've seen long enough to know exactly what happens, what can happen, how wrong it can be when it's not done properly. And my goal there is to help companies avoid these kind of errors, both in terms of advisory, because again, I could assess the status of an implementation and tell them what is wrong, because after 10 years as a functional consultant, I know the operational side of that. It's not program management that can assess at high level, but I can see I'm not program management, so I don't know how to handle a program, but I know if you show me a system, I can tell you what status it is in and how ready it is. And customers tend to neglect that to assess what to do and so on. But also the implementation itself, which is the delivery effectively. Once you assess the situation, you design something that is meaningful and so on. And I think that we are at a point as the stakes increase because F&O becomes bigger and bigger. You have the big partners that support big customers, but the delivery is so big that there are holes always. There's always something that is not covered. And a big point of that is also that customers are not sufficiently skilled internally to support the partner in doing the work. So it's and that's what I want to do. I want to help bridge that gap between the customers and the partners with helping with the delivery, with whatever is missing. We are smaller, we are more agile, but we are independent as well, so we can openly say what we think about the situation. And I think that's value added because it's more focused and more specific on what the customer would need, and we can say it openly and we can fix it as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like sometimes one of the key things for me is like when I worked in companies for 3-4 years, I could come with solution in like within half an hour or during the call and sometimes. But when I'm with new clients and I'm working with these people, sometimes I am not very confident, and they think it's not that I'm not confident. They think that it's me being not confident, but I would not say I'm not confident. I'm not assertive sometimes, because every time I think about like, what am I missing? What is the requirement that I don't know of? Why does it feel so simple to me? Because when someone talks to me and it's a simple thing, it's never that simple. So I always think, what am I missing? So I'll try to come back with better questions to ask them, and then realize, okay, now I have my base and this is the solution I propose. Because I've learned over the years that if I never say something's wrong, no one's going to know what's wrong. So it's my job as a solutions architect to I always point out the hard truth sometimes. I remember working with removing some systems completely, like sometimes I have re-implemented F&O because the way they have done is wrong. Even simple accounting, like they've created a wrong reporting currency and they thought they could change later. I'm like, it's never going to happen, right?
The first time, and then it's not. Sorry.
I know. And when they thought about re-implementing, they thought it could be 6 weeks or 10 weeks. I'm like, no, because you have these custom connectors, features built in. So I need to look at all these coming in fresh. I could identify what's wrong. But then for me to not give a solution, I need a bit more depth. So I'm not assertive right away, but I take my own time in terms of mostly it's coming up with better questions for the next day after understanding, and then trying to look at the system and look at the back end sometimes. But yeah, I agree with you, building the base, and sometimes consultants like you who are open to say what's wrong. Because I also realized when projects are becoming bigger now, they're all 2 million, 5 million, 1 million. What's happening is no one's interested in saying, hey, let's spend 4 weeks on business requirements, because they're like, let's get to a decision, like, can we do it or not? I'm just like, that's not how you do. You need to do a proper fit gap analysis before you realize what we are solutioning. Right?
Absolutely. But there is also, again, this becomes a completely different topic, but there are conflict of interest as well, because if you are a partner and you're delivering a solution, the only thing that you want is to push the customer after beyond the finish line in the agreed timeline.
Yeah.
And if the customer is neglecting their own testing or is neglecting providing all the requirements, well, tough luck for them, because the partner has to deliver.
Yeah.
And if you're the customer, then you tend to do the opposite, because you're going to say, all right, well, we have the customer, we have the partner, that's what we're paying them for. Let them do everything. Okay, but what do we have to do? I don't know, let's solve my problems. Okay, but that doesn't work like that. You have to provide the details. And what happens is that once this goes on for a certain amount of months and so on, people who are in the project, they're going to be too close to it to actually be able to involve, to actually see what's wrong, where needs to be, where the focus should be, what needs to be redone, and so on. And that's an advantage, as you were saying. If you arrive fresh, yes, it's easy to see at the beginning. Then you're thinking, all right, but what am I missing? And then you ask the questions. But then you have the fresh mind. You're not affected by a project that's going on for 1-2 years. Yeah. You can say, well, this is the situation. If you keep going like this, that's what's going to happen. Good or bad, usually bad. Yeah. And people in the project, they say, well, but we've done this for 6 months. We just need an extra month to finish it. You're going to say no, because you haven't done the initial part, so that's not going to help. And this is the type of help that I can give to companies with my consultants as IT Fandango, effectively, to provide consultancy service. I'm not going to take the ownership of the whole delivery. That you have the big partners for that, but I prefer to keep the flexibility of avoiding issues later on by being very focused in finding out what's wrong, what's missing, and then fixing it as well when it comes to that part of the implementation, anything that is functional.
No, yeah, I agree with you. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really grateful for your time. Like we said, once you give me 1 hour, it's a lot more than an hour. You have to prepare your stuff. So I would just give you last few words just to say where you, like we spoke about, they can reach you on LinkedIn, but just something from you to end the podcast.
You put me on the spot now. That's improvising, another good skill of a functional consultant. Now I'm going to tell you again, back on being a functional consultant, is that you're never done. There's always something new that you can learn.
Yeah. And
what I've noticed is that often is something that you thought you knew already, but there's a better way of doing it. So going back to what you think you know, and it's always, there's always a better way of doing it as you discover new things, discover new situations, new customers. So always having an open mind and doubting yourself first with your own knowledge there. If you tend to rely on what you know too much, then you become a fossil, and you're not open to new things, and you know how quickly F&O is changing. So being open to these new things, that's the last advice that I want to give to other people who are functional consultants.
No, thanks again. So we'll say bye to the episode for now. But
thanks, Ragnar. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate your time.
Yes, bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so I'll stop.